Welcome everyone to a special workshop from the Pittsfield Town Council for Tuesday, June 25th, 2019. I'd ask that we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I please now ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, so this evening we are here at a workshop to discuss the future of the Pittsfield Community Theater. People in the audience, again, you won't be participating, but you can take notes, and this is a informal workshop. There's only 3 basic rules. That the number 1 rule is our scribe is going to be Heather because she's the best at it. If I don't want Howard to think that I'm an AFib if I'm the one that does it, because that's what it'll look like. Rule number 2 is we want to have a drop dead time of 8 o'clock if possible. I'd really like to be out of here at 8 o'clock because it behooves everybody. I realize that we're not going to solve all the ebbs and flows of everything in just under 2 hours, but we can get the basics and see how we go from there. And the 3rd rule is that anybody wants to talk, this is going to be very informal. See what kind of ideas we can nail down and what time we have. Us meaning people at this table. So go right ahead, and I'll let Heather get started. I know you wanted to finish up on the. Are you all done with the easel?
I was. I thought that the results for the survey were a little confusing, so I just thought I'd try and straighten that out for people. So we had 153 respondents, and the questions, when I formatted them, I said on a scale of 5 to 1 or 1 to 5. 5 being most agreeable, 1 being least agreeable, or most disagree. When it went up and was formatted in the online, it was from 0 to 100 in the opposite direction. So the results that were reported, like the 45, the 31, 55, 49, 39, and 53, that's the average number that came up from all the respondents when the items were averaged together.
Right.
And that was looking at a 0 being most agreeable and a 100 as being most disagreeable or not strongest disagreement with the statement that was written.
Right.
So I don't know. Does that make more sense now? I know how you said it.
Well, I mean, I didn't realize that, but when I looked at it, it's obvious, even though we didn't know the scale was different, that it basically the town is split.
Yeah, I don't think that it really showed any clear. I mean, if you look at 50 being right here, it didn't really show anything clear. I started these 2 because these are the only ones that kind of are out of that middle road a little bit, and that was the one question 3 asked about. It was whether or not you agree that the theater should be run by a nonprofit made up of a board of community members, somebody from the town council, the schools, and different organizations. And then number 7 was a funding question for
What one are you thinking about?
Taxpayers should fund a portion of the operation. So that one had out of the funding questions, that one had the most agreement, and then this one had the most agreement as far as how it should be run. But I mean, it was pretty much split down the middle. It didn't really show anything definitive, so I don't know. I mean, I think it was helpful because we got a lot of feedback in the individual questions of what people said, and there isn't really a way to condense that very well. And then also there was 27 people that left their contact information so they'd be willing to volunteer. And this should have gone. Ann, did you get this from the theater group? I wanted to make sure that whatever happens, we capture those. So, but yeah, so that's basically how the survey panned out. So, as far as having to make decisions, I don't know if it was that helpful for us.
at least we got a guide to go by, something, we got a general idea of the feeling of how everybody's looking at it. It's pretty split.
Right.
And, you know, we kind of figured that, but weren't sure. Now we've got a more clearer picture, I think.
Well,
Go ahead, Dan.
So Heather, if I understand it right, from, you know, anything below the median there, okay? And those two questions, you know, that shows that more people disagree with the
Agree.
statement?
Agree with the statement. Yeah.
so 0 is a 5.
0 is a 5, so
Okay, so
most
it's
strongly
opposite
agree.
of what they,
Yeah, yeah, so that would be
Got it.
like,
okay.
so,
Does that
and
do that all the time?
two, I don't know, I've taken a lot of these surveys, but I've never made one. So this was an experiment,
Okay.
it needs some tweaking. So 50 would be the no opinion, because when I
Yeah.
wrote out the question, it was, most agree, somewhat agree, no opinion, somewhat disagree, and then strongly disagree were the options.
Okay. And they basically reversed it when they,
So
Yeah.
basically,
yeah, okay.
people don't have an opinion. Looking
Well,
at
it's
that.
not that they don't have an opinion, it's that when you look at all the opinions that were entered, they came out right down the middle, pretty much. It's not that there weren't opinions, because if you read the comments, there were definitely opinions.
If, can we look at this in a different way, all right? Can we look at this as to how many people answered, you know, either with a 0 or a 5? In other words, you know, a 0-1 or a 4-5, okay? And so, you know, you're going to get, I mean, yeah, the average is the average of the 153, but that doesn't tell you how many felt strongly
Right.
one way or the other. And you may see it fall out differently when you look at it in those terms.
I think it's possible to do that. I poked around on the results section trying to figure out how to present it, because you can do a bar graph this way, you can do a bar graph that way, you can have it stacked bar graph. And I didn't see a way to be able to do that. Aside from getting 100, like with the individual responses here,
Yeah.
that was a setting. You could do it like that, but for each question, you're gonna have 150,
Yeah.
you know what I
okay.
mean? So I
Yeah.
didn't do that just because I didn't know. But I think you're right that there was a spread there, but I think for every one, there was a 5, because you end up in the middle. For every 2, there was a 4.
Yeah.
And there were probably plenty of 3s, which were kind of,
Okay. All right.
Well, it's good to try new things,
yes.
definitely.
So I think the 2 biggest questions we have is, you know, 1, what do we do with it? And 2, the building. You know, if we're going to keep it, we have to be able to address the building and have a plan in place in order to do that.
Well,
Deb, you had something that you wanted to add at the very beginning.
yes, well, I just wanted to make a statement to the audience that I'm the one that started this ball rolling, and I just want to make it clear that I do not wish to see the theater go away. I wish it to become something more. And the only way that was going to happen is a little bit of shock therapy. So, because the issue has been there for a long time about losing money. So this now has forced the council to come to a decision as to what to do with the theater, which is what we're going to discuss tonight. And hopefully, I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know this is just, I'll just throw this out there. I have been and continue to be a person that likes to see a community theater because there's only a handful in the United States. However, I also understand that it can't continue the way it is. I get it. I'm a realistic person. It will probably eventually have to wind up going the road of 501c3. But if it does, and the councils want to do it depending on the circumstances and the money, I'm in agreement with Deb that we could look at donating a certain amount of money, should it go to a 501c3, if we have it, as a gesture that we still consider this part of the community, because we've had it for years.
Right.
And we still could keep a core group of people together to advise and help
Well, they would
if it
have,
ever got to that point.
yeah, they'd have a steering committee. though,
Steering committee.
If they were.
That's just my opinion. And the reason I say that is because I know the grants and stuff that would be available, should it go in that direction, that may not be available otherwise.
Right.
Mostly foundation.
Foundation
funding.
money.
Foundation funding.
Which, it's my hope that we could have the theater go 501c3. And today, it popped into my head, PEAK, which is our economic development piece, either at the last meeting or the council meeting or the one before, I had asked Mike Gray, who was in attendance and is on that committee, if maybe they could start doing some community development. So that popped into my head today. They're already a 501c3. So if they become economic and community development, the theater could be renamed, because it can't be a theater. There's no money for theaters, but could fall under the umbrella of PEAK and be able to get grants.
Possibility. Could happen.
It is. If you want the theater to be totally independent from the town, then that will not work. But if somehow it's connected to the town, then yes, the 501c3 of PEAK has applied for grants before, smaller ones, and gotten them for the town when we absolutely had to have a 501c3.
But-
So there's a possibility.
I was gonna say though, can't they expand what they do?
They can under their mission, it would fit. Yes.
And so if they were to add community development through their, then Heather had talked about the Main Street Communities program, and that's another possibility of funding. You have to hire a person to manage that particular program, but finding grants and getting grants and whatnot would help considerably.
The Main Street thing depends on what type of relationship you have with them. If you are strictly a Main Street community, then there's a hired staff person to run the program.
Half-time.
And it's usually like a third municipal funding, a third town funding, and a third public funding.
Right.
And then if you're an affiliate program, there isn't that requirement, and you still have access to some of their programming and resources and things like that. So that would
So
really
you went in more
depend.
depth than I did.
Yeah, because you can start as an affiliate and then build your way to be a full Main Street program.
Right.
And there's interest in people in town in doing that and having some type of a Main Street program, as well as a business alliance or a business development group.
Right.
And then the theater could fall underneath that, because it would be community development, it would be business development, it would be downtown development, it would be buildings. So there's interest in town for people to do that too.
So a good community to talk to that did the affiliate program first, because they wanted to make sure that it would work for them, was Farmington, which is a larger community. They went with the affiliate first, found out they had the base of support for it, and then went to the full designation. So they did a good two-step process.
I think there's only like 4 actual Main Street
Mm-hmm.
programs
It's very
in the
hard to
state.
do. Mhm.
Whether it's because of funding or people, I don't know, but there's only about 4, but there's like 15 or 20
Yes.
affiliates.
Mhm.
So, and whether they start at the affiliate and they find that works, maybe that's where they stay.
It does get you a lot of resources and training opportunities, connections,
Right.
networking. But you are
Which
correct.
we would need.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
if PEAK could tweak their mission
Mhm.
to include community development. One of the things that I saw on the Maine Community Foundation website was, when I was researching for community art program, found him at, I saw this symbol, it said CC equals ED. And what that means is creative communities equals economic development. So although we do a lot of economic development, we don't do a lot of community development. And we really need to. The more we can provide or have for our residents, the better off, the more businesses that will want to come. And doing this with the theater, I think, is a good first step.
This is just something that popped in my head, and I realize this is a long way down the road, and it's not a great comparison. But if you go down to, let's say, Railroad Square Cinema,
Right.
now that took them 20 years to get that to where it is. And of course, they have Colby College, and they have Thomas tied into that. And they have the credit unions and the businesses. But I would like to see a similar sort of things over the years where we could tie in businesses, tie in, like they have memberships. They have memberships, and they play a little bit of everything. Independent films, they tied in with different colleges. They tied in with I'm sure they tied in with Lawrence High School in Fairfield, in
Right.
Waterville. And I would like to. I realize we don't have that kind of a draw, but I could see something similar to that years down the road if you become a 501c3.
Main Street in Waterville is changing drastically when I went down there. I mean, I think it's amazing, but there's nothing to say that we couldn't get help from Colby College also, because they do have grant programs. So if we were to become, say, a Main Street community, that could be an option. When you start looking at community development, there's a lot more, I think there's a lot more out there for community development than for economic development.
We do a lot of community development, but it's not organized.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not organized under a group. The mission of the Pittsfield Economic Expansion Corporation does include community development.
It does.
Yes.
So,
And as a matter of fact, Mike had mentioned that once these other projects we could look at, we'll be looking to do other things, if you remember a couple meetings ago. Yeah.
what do you think, Howard?
Well, I was just thinking, as if we use the 501c3 under peak, would that be enough at arm's length from the town with respect to taxation and responsibility? I'm wondering whether you need a totally separate 501c3 for a cultural center versus,
I think they would eventually have to have their own,
Yes.
but I
Okay.
think now
Transition.
they could
Just
fall
get
under
it going.
peak. Yes, exactly. Fall
Yeah.
under peak and then transition to their own 501c3 once they get on their feet. I understand the other manager is coming back, so once the operating of the theater is in hand, then they can start the transition, and Pete can help them find people to be on a steering committee,
Yes.
which is what they would need in order to follow through with 501c3 applications, setting up their mission statement, so on and so forth.
If we decide that this is an entity that we want to move forward, I think one of the first things we need to do is stop referring to it as a theater. We need to refer to it as a cultural center, community center,
Thank you.
cultural center.
How about the Bijou?
Yeah.
I'm serious. I'm being serious.
I
Johnson
don't-
Hall in Gardner is Johnson Hall, but it's the oldest opera house in the state.
Yeah, but
So, I mean,
I
The
think
theater
that,
was the Bijou when it
I
started.
think that we need to look at it from that perspective.
Yes.
We also need to look at it not as something that's gonna happen in the next year, but actually
Correct.
something over the next 5 years, say.
Correct.
You know, the other thing that I think we should draw into it, and, you know, they've got a new headmaster's coming on. MCI, the ballet, you know, is always looking for, you know, places to do their shows. They
Right.
go to Waterville right now, you know?
Well, one,
If we want to highlight Pittsfield, let's do them in Pittsfield. you
well, the
know?
theaters, the cultural
There you
center
go.
has been very successful in procuring live acts. They've raised quite a bit of money in a short period of time doing just that. And so having the ballet, I mean, the ballet has performed there in the past. The issue is there are no dressing rooms,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, there isn't a bathroom back there either. I mean, so we would have to do some stuff to make it a little easier to have the ballet there. Like, there'd have to be a bathroom. And
And
I
it might
think,
not even be there.
remember,
Okay? You gotta start thinking of,
right,
you know,
it could be somewhere else.
exactly.
I don't know if the first question that we should address is the building. Because if we can't afford and come up with a way to fix that building long-term, it doesn't do any good to build all this programming around a building that we're not gonna be able to maintain and we're not gonna be able to keep.
Right.
So I think the first question, if, it sounds like there's a lot of support for the 501c3 idea. It sounds like that is the way that we should go. I know we haven't heard from Matt or Karen yet, but I think the first question we need to answer is, are we prepared to make a huge
prepared?
investment in this building?
Is the-
Because
well-
that's what it's gonna take, and it's gonna be, you know, can we go to our taxpayers and say, we're gonna pave all your roads, and then, you know, we want $1 million to fix this building.
Yeah,
You know,
that's not gonna
or
work.
we can either pave your roads, or we can put all this money into this building. I think that's
Well,
the first question, because everything that follows after that might be dependent on where the cultural center is located. And so that, I think, needs to be our primary question to answer first is, what are we gonna do with this building? Because we're not just talking about repairing it to make it sound now, we're talking about adding to it and making more space, and, you know,
Right.
we're talking about not just fixing the building, we're talking about expanding the building.
Right.
In order to do these things. So, does it make sense to do that financially, or does it make sense to partner with another building in town or other organizations in town to locate the cultural center somewhere else?
Right.
We have schools that we may be building new schools in the next couple years. You know, Warsaw has an auditorium, they have a
Yeah.
gymnasium. Is there an
They're-
option of
They don't
putting
have an
cultural-
auditorium, they have a
Gymnasium, but I mean, is there an option of putting a theater in there? You know what I mean? I mean, is there other things that we could do that would make more sense than putting all that money into that building?
Well, I think probably you're right, we need to decide if we're gonna do that. I never did see the, Chimbro did the evaluation, the first evaluation.
They did the first evaluation, and then we had a historic architect do the second.
Okay, so
evaluation.
do we have copies of that?
Yes.
Can we have copies of that?
Yes.
Because I'd like to, if we could see that, we could see what they recommended, we can see what the cost is and see what's the worst thing that has to be done, you know, I would say the roof too, but, you know, in order to bring the building up to snuff and then maybe expand.
How long ago was that done?
It was done in 2016.
Yeah, okay, I was gonna say 2 years.
The other thing too, it'd be awful nice to say, geez, you know, they're gonna build a new school, so you're gonna have Wausau sitting there, you could use that, which would make perfect sense. The only problem is any successful theater you see is on a main drag, or not theater, but culture, even cultural center.
Yeah.
Location, location, location.
Exactly.
If it's off
And if
3 or
we,
4 streets up, people aren't gonna go like they will if it's right on your main drag. They just won't.
well, and if we want if we want to participate, something we need to think about, if we want to participate in, say, an affiliate Main Street program, then we have to develop Main Street. We can't develop School Street.
And the other thing is too, is you also need to know that, like, you don't want that building sitting empty any great length of time. I mean, if, let's say we decide to move it,
Building.
I'm not gonna say theater, I'm gonna say cultural center.
Oh, yeah.
If you
Put it somewhere
If you put it
else.
somewhere else, now you've got an empty building, you got to figure out what you wanna do. Now, I know that you could say, well, maybe we could sell it to someone, so, maybe there's another use for it, that's another whole workshop that you could have on that. But you don't want it sitting empty any great length of time either, so if a decision's made, I think dual decisions are gonna have to be made.
It'll be part of the
Sure.
plan,
Yeah.
what to do with the building.
Yep, exactly.
My thoughts are, it just doesn't make sense to throw good money after bad. If we have to put $1 million into an old dilapidated building, why not tear it down and build something new in that section? I would think $1 million would build you a
I
heck of a
don't know if
building.
we could do that, though.
I think we can, because it's not a historic
It's not a
building.
historic
And if you
building.
build in the footprint, then you're all set.
Just build something
Well, and
energy
there's the
efficient.
building next door that's also
Which has-
for sale.
Has its footprint.
And it already has a footprint, so, you know, that's definitely a possibility, but I would like to look at what Chimbro had to say about what needed to be fixed, because,
Yeah, if I remember
A
right,
lot.
if I remember right, it was pretty, there was a lot of
it was
things.
all encompassing.
It wasn't just like,
It's
yeah,
not
a
just
couple
one,
hundred
that's
thousand
what,
dollars.
Right, no,
There was-
and I know that
there's
there's a
issues
lot
with
of
the
things.
bathrooms and the heater, I mean,
Right.
lots of issues.
Yeah.
And so, were there suggestions?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
So,
So what we'll
can
do
you
is,
lay your hands on those
yes,
right
we'll
now?
make a copy of the Chimbro review that was done and a copy of the 2016 study that was done. It's pretty extensive to review. So
Okay.
it would be hard to review it tonight.
Okay, so maybe you can get that to us and we move that part of the conversation to another workshop. I mean,
We have some copies,
They
we all
have
have ours
copies
with
of the
us, yeah.
last one.
they do, good.
What was the
Will
bottom
you
dollar
share?
amount? We've got 3 of them.
Awesome.
You know, that's another thing that we never really thought of, that, I mean, granted, it's a part. Like Matt said, what's the I know you gotta worry about a footprint, what's the possibility of maybe building a brand new building there? It may not be as bad as you think, considering what people are getting for construction costs now. There's a lot of good bids out
Well, you're
there.
not renovating an old building that has a lot of problems.
It'd probably cost you more to tear it down than anything else and get rid of it.
Which again, because we have the transfer station, we can haul it, so we don't
Yeah,
have,
we
you know,
have our
so
own
much
truck and
cost
everything.
from the contractor.
yeah. But, yeah, I think, to me, I feel like that even if
It's
it, even
expensive.
if it takes, to me, even if it takes several years to pull that off, I think in the long haul, that would be a really, really good thing for the town of Pittsfield. I mean, that'd be a monumental item to have, a good performing or cultural center, which would, to me, have like a performing arts stage type of thing. Which I know that's what everyone's been talking about. And I think that would be something that we could accomplish and look back 20 years later and be like, wow, that was hard to do, but wow. I mean, that.
I'd like to see it, and I know I've said this before, but like I said, I've been down the Railroad Square Cinema a bunch of different times, and it amazes me how many people actually have a membership there, because they're tied in with the arts, or they're tied in with the school, or they're tied in, and that thing's pretty self-sufficient, and it's just basically done through, but again, that's a 501c3, I know it is.
Yes, it is.
But it took 15 years to get it to that point.
Party pants.
You know, the other thing is if if the building's getting tore down, and it's gonna be a while, then maybe the old Universalist building could be used for other things, to get that into the public domain, and then you could do different things in 2 of the buildings. I mean, that would tie them in together.
Well, that's, as we're talking, I'm wondering if, our cultural center doesn't have to have only one location. You know,
There can
we
be other
have some-
locations tied to it,
Right, so I mean, could we have?
like if we had a community art program.
Right. So the UU Meeting House has expressed interest in having other groups and organizations use the space to have the building used. It is a historic building, and by partnering with them, we might open up opportunities for them to be eligible for grant funding and historical grants and things like that as well. So we can look at this as benefits to the town in more than one way. And if we can have 2 locations for a cultural center, then perhaps, you know, the UU Meeting House becomes the host for the theater portion of things until the other building is constructed or
Mhm.
whatever we end up doing.
And then you could take the
Or-
UU building and make that the date, things that are looked at during the day, you play your films, your plays at night down there in the new building, or however you could do it. Just like the library has their access things they can do, that could be the same way. There's nothing says it can't.
So it's been a while since we've given out copies of these to the council, so we'll make copies for the councilors of the Historic Preservation Architects review, which is very comprehensive,
This is,
very comprehensive.
So this is
And
what is this? Who did this?
It would have been
Ames is-
I know, but
Ames.
who?
Ellen Ames, who used to be a historic preservation architect on her own, who has joined up with a new firm.
Okay, so this is the historic then.
Yes.
I also want
The
us to
Chimbrow
have the
one.
Chimbrow
Yes.
one, because basically, I think they could tell us, and maybe we should have invited them tonight to listen to our discussion, but,
That was done by one of the employees on their own, who dedicated their time.
right,
So Ben had done that from an engineer's point of view.
right.
So that's good, you got the architect, you got the engineer. So make a copy of both studies, understanding that they were done in certain years, so you'd have to have an escalator for your cost to,
Right,
increase
right.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be neat to see those, but I think that the council, my gut feeling is that we're thinking more something new than fixing them. Because I don't think we can really make what's there, what the vision, of like what we want is.
You'll
Obviously, to us, Main Street is very important,
Oh, yeah.
You'll have this as background information, but I really like the idea of something new in its place, because then you don't have all the issues.
I think it'd be easier to get the funding for a new than it would be to
It may be, it's not a historic site.
It's not a historic
So we
site.
can take it down if we have to.
That part.
Is that what you're thinking? Take it down and build within the footprint of that current building?
That and maybe
The one next door.
there's
And the
one
one
next
next
door,
door
because I don't
for
think
sale.
that building's
Yeah.
big enough.
It's not.
No, it's
For
not,
what?
it's
The
not.
footprint.
Yeah.
Eventually,
Big enough.
there would
Yeah.
have to be an expansion, so if we built a new building and fit it in, well, we'd have to check the other building to make sure it's sound. I mean, we don't wanna get into
Of
another
course.
building that needs $1 million worth of
Well,
fixing.
I'm thinking that you'd almost tear both of them down and then just build one structure that would be the structure that we.
It's an
The
option
issue,
to look at.
the issue with that though is then we don't have a cultural center at all
For
while we are going
for several
through-
years.
For
Right.
several years,
So
yes, this is a
if
long,
If we,
that's why the UU Church might be,
but if we took one down, built it,
That doesn't make any sense, because you're gonna be, that doesn't make any sense.
well, we can't afford to build a big, huge building, and we can't afford not to have this on Main Street. I just feel that it's absolutely important to the community that it be on Main Street. I'm not saying that we can't partner with somebody and have some events at, say, the Universalist Church, but
I think we should,
I'm
especially
not a
seeing
church
how it's-
person, and,
It's not a church, their designation is a meeting house. They
okay,
changed that a couple years
I'm
ago.
sorry, I use church.
And that's hard to break habits,
People
you
are still
know?
doing that.
It's like
But
calling the
they
beach
have
boys.
church there on Sunday. They want the building used for lots of different
so there's
organizations. and
nothing
stuff.
saying that we can't partner with them, but we cannot lose a presence on Main Street, I just,
No, well, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is it doesn't make sense if you want to have the footprint of the 2 buildings available, which I agree with Caleb. I don't think the footprint that the theater is in now is big enough to do anything else in. It's just not. You can't put any more seating in there. The only way you would gain more space is if you got rid of that lobby and bumped it out a little bit. But that still
Well, a new
doesn't give you
building
room
could
for
give you-
bathrooms, dressing rooms, and all the things. And the stage is
Neat
not
staging
very
area.
big.
Yes.
You know, I have not seen the theater used as a ballet performance,
Yeah.
maybe for solos or recitals or something, but not a full on for that.
Well, they did.
The
They
stage
did
is
in
so small.
Chimbrow.
I have a hard time
Well, they did
picturing
it
it.
because
So what's
I
the-
was working at MCI when they did it.
We worked with a engineering or an architecture type company. It was out of Bangor, and I'll have to try to dig up the name. He was super reasonable. He came down and met with us for free when we were doing a project, another project at the church up here in town. And I think that contacting somebody like him may be a good option, because he could come and take a look. He would come and like measure it all out and take a look, and he would use his knowledge. He's been an architect for a lot of like libraries and different things. I don't remember specifically him saying that he's done a performing arts.
Is he in Pittsfield?
He's in Bangor. There's,
I really think we need to utilize Pittsfield people as much as possible.
yeah, I agree. I'm not sure there's
I
somebody
don't
in
know that you
Pittsfield
got
that
the
would be.
expertise here in Pittsfield.
I mean,
I'm
Chimbrow
sorry.
is a contractor, but I'm not sure they would do the architect. Like,
Even the hospital and other entities that I've worked with, they use outside firms for architecture and planning, folks that have done things like this, and they use local, as much as possible for building and constructing, and that's a way to do it. And what you need is, you need seed money to get the plans done, and you also need a professional fundraiser in order to to do a major fundraising campaign.
you would need a picture
Yeah.
and like a really detailed plan to get everybody excited, just like what they did with the library.
Yeah.
And maybe we could talk to the people that did that with the library, and I'm sure Chimbrow would recommend somebody. Maybe there is somebody local that can.
I guarantee you, there's people that were involved in that library project, like Doug Fratty, that would be more than willing if they could to help out. I know they would, because they're very community oriented.
I tell you, this would
And
be a big thing.
they did a fantastic job at that library.
Well-
And,
I'd like to address the issue, go back to the issue of doing one building at a time. This is Johnson Hall in Gardner. It's on Main Street, and to look at it from the outside, you wouldn't even know there's anything in there, but they're totally redoing it. It is the oldest opera house in the state, and in the center here, there is a picture. When I went to a show, in this bottom left-hand piece, that's where we saw the show. They have a small stage set up in there while they're doing renovations. This was they had a stage, and it had, the seating was on the floor. There was some elevated seating, but it was a plywood floor still, because they're still doing it. And they're also having shows while they're doing that, plus running a capital campaign, fundraising campaign. So it is possible to do one at a time, and that way we don't lose.
I guess I would leave that discussion for at the point when we have a architect, or somebody who really understands construction, what's there, and that's where the architect's knowledge of construction, what we need, and what the footprint is like would be super handy, because then they'd be like, oh, yeah, I can see how you could save this piece over here so that you can keep using it for, yeah. But I wouldn't say I'm totally against the idea, but I'm definitely leaning more towards Heather. I think it'd be difficult to do, but maybe not. Maybe I'm just not seeing it, but.
my biggest concern is if this goes down this road and we start tearing down a building, we're gonna be a while. I wanna make sure that they be on board, and the theater committee be on board with doing things out of the UU building, for the simple reason that I don't want that to get lost in the translation. They've worked very hard to get programming up, and they had to make some tough decisions. And I
Right.
think we need to have that available to the public and to them.
Which is,
And
right.
while this is in construction, and I think it would behoove both parties in the end. I really do. I think it would help the UU building, as part of that, and I also think it would help the Main Street as far as that goes. Then we can tie them together and do different programs, but I really think that's an important thing. I don't think these people wanna lose that part of it, because they've worked so hard to get it to where it is, that I think we need a building for them to use it of. So that's something I feel very strongly that we should check into before we tear down a brick. But that's just me.
I think, having some programming at the UU Meeting House while there's other, either renovations or destruction and reconstruction going on is a good thing, and I think it would open up more opportunities for fundraising for the theater committee and the theater group, because there's a kitchen there and you can do dinner and a movie. You can have, there's like the big vestry area, and then there's another stage, there's an actual stage, and then there's also the church area where it has other seating. And I have talked to Holly Zadier about this, and she would have to check with the group, but she sounded amenable to actually taking the movie screen and putting it in there so that people could sit on the benches instead, and have the raised seating instead of sitting in fold-up chairs, looking
Flat
at.
on the floor,
Yeah,
right,
it
right.
just makes it a little, wooden benches, but it makes it a little more comfortable. Just bring a pillow with you, but and then there's an option there, that you could do other type of fundraising events in conjunction with that.
I
So
know
think
that
there's
we're not
options.
supposed to speak,
Right.
but I have a couple of points that none of you have really touched upon. If I could just share, because I'm not ready to jump out of my seat.
All right, councilors, how do you feel about,
I
how do you
really
feel about
feel
having
we
Ann
should-
throw her concerns in?
I
I mean, if it's gonna benefit,
It's
move this
not
along,
like
that's
you have
fine.
the town of Pittsfield here. You have a committee that's been working for 6 months like dogs on this. I put sometimes 20 hours a week into this building. You have no idea. None of you have even looked at what the aims, you have no idea what it says. You're talking about using a different building and tearing down buildings and adding buildings, but you have no idea what you're up against. Nothing. You haven't even looked at you haven't inspected the building,
Right,
nothing.
this is,
Well,
this is just
the
a, this
beginning.
this is
But you're
just
wasting
ideas
time
that we're
until
throwing
you know
out
what
there.
you're doing.
These are ideas that we're throwing out there, just different scenarios
This
that we're trying to come
workshop
up with.
is for the council to
Thank you,
figure
Jen.
out where
I
the
know.
council stands on this issue,
Yep.
not. We
Has the
do
council ever
want,
asked us anything?
Well, this is step one. This is gonna be a long process, and we plan on asking a lot of questions. It's just right now, this is the very first edge of it, Ann, that's all. These
Well,
are just,
I highly recommend that you educate yourselves about the building that you're talking about.
yep, and I think that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead. Was you,
no, it wasn't.
okay. Was somebody else getting ready to speak, and I probably cut you off?
I mean, I guess I'm confused. I thought everyone agreed that the building didn't have what it really needed to be, what the town was envisioning for it to be. As far as like,
Well,
as far as a performing arts type thing, it doesn't have
we
a
don't
real
have anything
stage. It
that.
doesn't have any dressing rooms or any staging area or.
But
And
when I
it's
was
not
cut
big enough
off
to do
about
that.
when I was talking about the ballet being at the theater,
Yep.
which is now a cultural center, Chimbro put trailers, their work trailers, right behind the building so that costume changes could be done that way. I think that we can figure out a way to do stuff so that they stay in the same place. I would like to see what we have. I have the architectural. I would like to see the other two reports about the building, the architect and then Chimbro, to see what, and then look at the building. And maybe talk to Chimbro about how can we go about, if we decide we want to renovate the building, how can we go about it, how should we go
The
about it?
phasing.
Right, how do we do this in phases where it keeps the cultural center open? Any comments?
We'll make copies of the studies for you. It's been a while since the council's had them. And when we do, we'll remember that those prices were in those particular
Right.
years. So, but it gives us an idea. And we did, in the architectural project, already had completed the digital projector. So we've got monies that do not need to be raised in that particular figure. And so we'll give you copies of those, and then we will check around to see if Ellen Ames would come down to look through the theater with you. She's very, very knowledgeable. She had completed the historic architectural review, and she's very nice and very helpful. She's in with another company now, and formed a new company. And we can talk to Chimbro to see if we can have an engineer come over to meet with us.
Go through, so we would have the reports, we could read them, write down whatever
Yes.
questions we have, and then
Yes.
would we want to meet with both of them together, the architect and the engineer going into that building? I would like to see how we could keep the theater and the cultural center in that same building on Main Street. So
When you say-
I'm in favor of
When you
renovating
When you say you're in favor of renovating that building,
and buying the building next door and have it done in phases.
See, part of the problem is if it costs you, and I don't know, I'm not an architect, this is just pie in the sky stuff right now. But let's say it costs you $1.5 million to renovate that building.
Well, we're not gonna
And
have.
I don't know if it's gonna cost that, I don't know, because I have no idea. But if it costs you $1.5 million to renovate the building, and for $2 million you can build a new one.
Well, I think,
Then you have-
I
That's
think,
where you,
Okay.
Then you
I
have
We
think
need to look at the options.
yeah,
I think
exactly.
that's where we're just circling, where we
Right.
need to get somebody, I mean, from my experience from dealing with architects or something like that, it doesn't take them very long looking at a building and talking to an engineer to really say, hey, guys, you're throwing good money after bad, trust me. This isn't, we should just do this way, or maybe we can do it that way. And that's where, we're just guessing, and
Yeah,
it's
we're
not
just
worth-
guessing, we don't know.
Yeah, but
Okay.
the point is, you know what the council thinks. The council is saying that we want to have something on Main Street, right?
Yeah.
We want to not just close the theater and pretend like we don't have a theater anymore, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And we're exploring whether we want to rip that puppy down and buy the next one next to it, or renovate that one.
We need
So
more
that's
things.
our
Well,
stance.
That's why this is a workshop.
Yes,
And
but
the
that's
first
what they're hearing from
workshop
us.
with, and I see Heather taking good notes.
I'm trying. Caleb was going really fast.
I know.
We want a
You
Main
have
Street
to talk
location,
slower.
and then I skipped to exploring, rip the puppy down, and
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not putting that in
between
there.
Well, this is just a workshop, so the notes don't have
Yeah, they're
to
just
be
bullets.
formal.
They'll be bullets.
Right.
So this is brainstorming, that's what
Yeah.
a workshop
Okay,
is.
so I would like to interject right here. Amber is sitting there making all kinds of faces, her eyes are bulging out of her head. So
I have been, yes,
could you briefly say what you have to say, like in 3 minutes or less?
I can
Because
go
this
way
is
less
our
than 3
workshop.
minutes. First of all, my facial expressions come out with what I'm thinking, and that would be why they're changing so much. I am just in a little bit of disbelief how it's all gone from we might not be able to have $15,000 to fill the gap to we're ripping down 2 buildings and putting up a new one. It's just, I'm just listening and processing and
Well, that's what
taking
we're,
notes.
that's what we're doing, and nobody has said rip it down and build a new building.
Just a
We are
proposition.
brainstorming here. This is, and no decisions are made at a workshop.
Mhm.
Right.
It's
So,
just
and
ideas.
obviously, this project is gonna take more than one workshop. And obviously, it's gonna be, like Howard said, say, like over a 5-year period. Once we decide what it is we want, how we want to proceed, then it's gonna be a 5-year project.
Yeah.
I
So, we just can't
envision,
stay the way it
I envision a movie theater / cultural center, call it what you want to call it, to get the funding. I see that on Main Street. I see either a nice new building, or else unless you get some renovation that's so cheap that you can't believe it. But I see a good, modern, state-of-the-art facility there that's going to attract people. And I can see that probably just like you would at the public library. We never even recognized it. It turned out so well. I see absolutely no reason why it can't happen. It's going to take some planning, it's going to take some time, and it's not going to happen overnight. But in the end, you probably have a movie theater / cultural center that everybody can use that will last the rest of your life. Okay? And then we won't have that subject again for a long, long time. And I can see that happening. We just got to get the right people in. And like you said, architecture's a big deal. That's step one.
I would like to, again, reiterate, I would like to see both of those plans or studies. And then I would like to meet with those people and go through the cultural center to see especially with Chimbro. We can do it with both, but I'm most interested in Chimbro because they put a dollar figure to it. So I would like their engineer to explain what priorities, if we were to do this, and over a course of time, how could we do that? That's what I would want to ask Chimbro.
Yep. Well, I kind of, just real quick, my view of it could be really skewed, but my view of it in the future is a lot like what Tim is saying, and that it would be, but I am hoping, I guess I've never been in the Newport Cultural Center. What is that like? Is that just like, that doesn't have a performing arts stage or
No.
anything?
Their library.
So
I don't know why they
It's
call it.
their-
It's
I'm
their-
not a big fan of cultural center, but whatever. I think, I think that call it whatever you want, but my view of it is that it's more of a performing arts center, and that it is something that actually supports itself and maybe that's not possible. Maybe I'm totally pie in the sky, but it supports itself more so. And there's like regular shows that are like happening at it. The people from in town and in out of town are coming to Pittsfield, and it's one of those things that when people think about living in Pittsfield, they're like, oh, that'd be fun to live there. The Performing Arts Center always has like stuff going on. There's always and it's a nice, comfortable, modern facility that's efficient and clean,
Energy efficient.
yes, and it's something that our grandkids, would, want. So that's what I'm envisioning. Whether we can get there or not, I really hope we can, because I think that it's worthy of a lot of sacrifices. There.
The other thing too is and this is just one of the things. Okay, when my son was doing drama at MCI, they had a regional thing, and he got on that, and they had like 4 different schools that competed in drama, and they did it all out of one building, and you could see that something similar once you involve the schools, once you involve Bossoff Ballet, once you involve these different entities, along with getting, like these people have gotten in these good shows, along with the movies, tie it all in together, like you said, and then kind of self-supporting of itself. And however you set that up is however you set it up. I know, like I said, whether it's you have a sliding scale of you're a member of this
capital campaign.
Right. It's So what I get out of that is you want to talk to Chimbro, you want to get somebody down here to give us an estimate of what it would cost versus what we've got.
Well, I'd like to walk through the building with the Chimbro engineer and have their study in my hand and say, prioritize this list for me. Before we go ripping it down and having them, I would like to know
You want to get
how
your
we
back
could
around.
keep the building. If it's fiscally, if we are fiscally able to keep the building, if we do the renovations in stages like Johnson Hall is doing, and I keep going back to them because that's exactly what they are doing. And so they're still utilizing, and in the middle of on the front page, that's a whole year's worth of programming.
So,
But
two things. One, My gut instinct is that Johnson Hall is doing their renovations in stages because they need to keep the building, because it's a historic building. This is not a historic building.
Right.
It has no, I won't say it has no value, but it's not an asset to the town in that sense that it will bring in grant money or funding money because of its historic designation. It doesn't have that, it cannot have it. I don't see the benefit of keeping the building and putting all that money into it and then still having a building that will need ongoing repairs and ongoing maintenance that still won't meet the needs of the cultural center that you want to establish. I don't see a couple things. I'm kind of with Amber in that we said we're not giving the theater $45,000 in funding in order to meet their full year of funding this year. And now we're talking about, oh, we're just gonna put up a building. And yes, we're gonna do due diligence and look at it and plan it out and
right.
everything else. But it doesn't ignore the fact that we would still have something operating, and are we gonna fund that to the full extent it needs to be funding during the time that these transitions are being made? Whatever that transition is. If we're
And
gonna
that-
keep the building and operate in that building while those changes are being done, then we still need to figure out, are we gonna operate the theater?
Right.
You know, are we going to be having it be a town entity? And we haven't really, I mean, there's like basic questions that we need to answer before, and that would be the biggest one because it has impact for our budget that's coming up this coming year. Beyond capital campaigns and all these other things. This can all come later. We gotta decide if we're gonna keep operating this theater next year. You know,
And if we are, at what level?
I think
Exactly.
the townspeople can swallow it a little bit better if they know that there's other things in the works. If they just see this going on and on forever and the
Well,
cost of
that's
climbing.
what got us to where we are now, though.
Yeah.
Is-
Because it's just a little more this year, a little more this year, a little more this year,
Right.
and then
And-
it's
Right.
$157,000 or
Renovation
whatever it
should
was.
have been ongoing the whole time that the theater has been open.
But that doesn't change where we are
Right,
now. So now we're at
exactly.
the point of, do we continue operating at the level and how it's operating now? Because you're not gonna turn it into a cultural center right off the bat.
No.
And
No.
calling it a cultural center doesn't make it so. So I think we just need to call it the theater until it's a different entity or a different operation of some kind, because it's just gonna confuse people.
Yeah.
They're gonna think we just voted to build a cultural center, you know?
And
it's
what is
gonna
a
pop
cultural
up.
center anyways?
Exactly. I don't think that we
Yeah.
can just up and use terminology just to make it different.
No, I think we gotta be realistic.
still the theater.
I think that, like I said, I think that if a plan is in the works to change things, then I think people are a little bit more receptive if they see no changes are coming. They wouldn't shut the library down while we were gonna rebuild that. I mean, you know, it's kinda like that. Now, I realize there's more for the library than there is for the theater. I totally get that, but I think that if people know that things are getting done, then they're more apt to not give us quite so much grief about funding it.
Yeah, well, I kind of view it as I would rather spend some of the money, or spend the money that we would spend on the operation of the theater, and really use that money to pay for the architect, pay for all these and like really try to, and
So
maybe
you're
that's
talking
not
about
possible.
closing it while we do that?
Well, we have been talking about moving it, or it moving to the UU church, which is the UU building meeting house. And so I would think that would save a lot on the budget of the theater, would be my guess. Obviously, we would give the UU meeting house some money, but I would think that would save a lot. Am I not right? Or
No.
It wouldn't save any?
No, you'd still have to
You
pay
still-
the lights,
You still have to pay for, right,
your movies.
you still have to pay
The
for
building's
people to
paid
work
for,
there.
And and there's nothing been done to it, so we may end up spending more depending on what the UU Meeting House wants.
It's gonna cost us more to run it at the UU Meeting House?
No,
Is that the
she,
sense that
she
you?
said perhaps,
Perhaps.
and
Yeah.
we
Well, no,
don't,
I'm
We-
looking at having.
we
We
don't
didn't talk
know.
about that. I just said, you know, what do you think about this idea?
because they're
If-
looking to raise money too.
Mhm.
So we would have to rent the Meeting House, I think, don't you?
I would think that we would come to some type of agreement with the UU Meeting House about utilizing their building, just as anybody else would to utilize the building on a regular basis.
Right.
They also do have needs for renovations for their buildings, but by the town partnering with them to offer programming, it would help them in grant applications because they do have that historic status. And showing that they have support from the town will help their applications. I mean, usually if you have partnerships,
Yes.
it would help their applications to get work done on their building as well.
They'll get more
So-
points because of that.
Right, it would help them score better on applications, but I'm sure, I mean, we would have, if we're gonna be in there using that building 5 to 7 days a week, then you would wanna help with the heat, you would wanna help with the water, the sewer, you know, all those other expenses, if we utilize the kitchen for fundraisers or something like that, and had spaghetti dinners and stuff once a month, you know, you would wanna help, you know, utilize their kitchen and maybe rent the kitchen from them in order to do that. So I don't think it would save a ton of money, but it's not something that, I even broached Holly with, so.
Yeah,
We didn't
I guess
talk
I'm
dollars,
thinking of it
we just
wrong.
talked possibilities.
Possibilities.
I mean, it might, I don't know, you know, it might bring in more revenue to offset the expenses because you would have other options there. You know, you could have a larger audience in the larger room, or you could have smaller, you know, more intimate concerts or something like that. Maybe you could do a wine and cheese and comedy night or something in there, or do small plates or something, I don't know. You know, but it does open it up to other options for fundraising and for events.
You didn't write any of that
Ann's got one more comment. Does anybody mind if she throws it out there? Go ahead, Ann.
Well, I just wanted to just put it out there. I don't know why I feel this way. I just have for a while. I hope that the ballet is here for another 20 years. I think that before we get crazy about, you know, accommodating the ballet, perhaps the committee or the council should approach MCI, find out where they are with their ballet program. And last time I knew they had 2 employees. That scares me. If Natalia falls down and breaks a leg, there's no teacher. So I just think that probably there ought to be something looked into that. I feel like that's like wavering. Since Bossoff himself is gone, I hope not. I certainly
Right.
hope not. I hope it's here forever. But it is something to think about.
Talking about dressing rooms and bathroom and
But we
bigger
would need those
stage, that
for
you
performances
would need that
anyways.
anyway.
Right.
So
Exactly.
we're not
But
catering
don't
to
think
the
that-
ballet.
My thoughts were, no, I didn't say you were catering to the ballet. I said, don't, just consider looking into that portion. It's wonderful they're here in town. Let's make sure they're gonna be here a few more years. And
And if they are, maybe we can partner with them.
find out if
I don't know
they're
why they would
willing
like
to
that.
partner before we think we're gonna get any funding and any help, any assistance, or even any participation, because they're not beating down the door now, which I can kind of understand, but if you ask Dean Neal, he won't come to this theater unless it's a free performance, because he told me he can do it at the gym at MCI for nothing.
He
So-
can, but it won't sound the same.
But he can still do it for free.
I would.
I don't think Dean cares about that part, obviously.
You mean
Well, I
The
think
big-
Dean needs to think about the community that he works in.
You know, the
Well,
biggest thing is don't put all your eggs in
discussion
one
you have to
basket.
have with him.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just saying maybe we should all look into, or there should be a committee look into where they're at with that ballet program. I hope it's here forever. It's something to think about.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I'm not super familiar with the ballet program. Is the ballet program its own entity located at MCI, or is it
Yes.
actually
MCI
part
owns
of
it.
processing
Is it-
MCI
Programming
owns
at
it.
MCI.
MCI owns it now.
They own it.
I
They
was
own
told-
it now.
I was told it was its own entity, so we should check it.
They
Check
own
it,
it.
So
And
they
they
paid
put a
it-
huge amount of money
So
into
So they've
it.
taken it over within the
Yeah, when
last.
Mike
No,
Wiley
they bought
left,
it. They
Yeah.
bought it.
Okay.
Mike Wiley left and NCI took it over.
They-
When did Mike
okay.
Wiley leave?
Can I ask a question that's totally, probably unrelated to any of this stuff, but we talked about at the very beginning, we talked about Main State Community, and how Farmington Theater did this. Is that something we wanna look into, maybe pick their
No,
brain?
the town of
Time to
Farmington.
come? Maybe we
was-
should see if we could get somebody down here and ask them some questions,
I-
or?
Well, I.
Is that-
First of all, I think we need to
Raise
put a
me.
plan together, what we need to do first, because now we are just all over the place.
Okay.
And I think we need to,
That's a sound issue, but a good one.
Yeah,
It is.
I just wanted, I didn't wanna lose that,
No.
that's all.
So
written
there's,
that down.
as far as talking to the Maine Community Foundation with the Main Street program, I'm part of a group of people that are working on putting together, like a core group to meet with Ann Ball. She is the contact person for the Main Street Foundation, or
Okay.
Maine Community Foundation.
Maine Community Foundation. yeah.
And so we're looking at having a meeting maybe late July. We're trying to contact people that might be interested in sitting on a board or core group of some kind. And then looking at meeting with Ann and then having a public meeting later on to come up with like a roadmap and a proposal, and then have a public meeting to draw people in and see about support for that. So that's not gonna go away. I mean, that's a separate issue from this. But if that were already established and running as its own 501c3, then it could take
If
the
what
theater
was?
under its wing. A Main Street program
A Main Street program.
could utilize
Okay.
the theater as programming under the Main Street program, because it's on Main Street, it represents economic development, it represents development of the Main Street, and has a strong community aspect to it. And those are the components that you need for their programming.
So you said you're on a committee?
It's just a group of people that have been talking about it, trying to pull in more people.
Okay.
So-
Because I think I would like to go through the theater with the two different studies. That's what I would like to do and see. And we could start chipping away at some of this, but we need to have a plan. And we don't have one, so I know this is our first meeting and we're just brainstorming, but
Yep.
the decision to either keep that building or not is going to be crucial. We need to make that decision before we start the budget. If we, either way, we have to decide before the budget process what we're gonna do as far as a building.
So we'll educate ourselves on the building, so I'll work on that.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody in agreement with that, you get the two entities in and have them go through the building, give us a rough estimate as to what we're looking at? And so that'll be step one.
Step 2, could we meet with the UU Meeting House and
Yeah.
find out what it would,
What it is they have to offer.
how much would we, you know, like how many days a week would we want to use it? How much is it going to, like, what are the expenses? I mean, I'm not trying to get some sweetheart deal with the UU church, please. With the UU Meeting House, I'm just trying to understand like what would be a fair, you know, split of like because obviously we're heating, you know, like some of the big ticket numbers that we're looking at in the budget, you know, like heating and employees and you know stuff like that. I think are ones that would change, I would say, but maybe not. I don't want
So
to.
we're everybody good with the first two steps? I am.
Remembering that any meeting that we have with the UU Meeting House, because we don't have the specifics, they will not be able to provide specifics either until we have more specifics on what we would want to do.
Yeah.
So we'd have to map that out a little bit.
Okay, yep, and that's where it'd be good to probably work with
So
the committee to.
How
how do we go about mapping this out? I mean,
We're going to take our budget and figure out,
I'm
you know,
I'm
what
we
we
thinking-
have to make a
Second,
decision.
folks, what?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm thinking with the results of the survey that we did, you know, we had 153 respondents. You know, it was promoted on the website, but it really wasn't promoted much beyond that. I'd really like to get more of a feel from the town folk as far as what their interest is in helping, you know, with this, or desiring to have it be in existence. You know, if people are telling us, I don't want a theater or a community center or a cultural center here, then, you know, we're going to continue to get pushed back year after year, no matter what we give to the movie theater or whatever it is. You know, how do we convince people, more than 153 of the folks in town, that this is a reasonable entity and that they want it?
Well,
One of the ways you can convince them will be, like I said, I'm gonna use the library as a perfect example. People wanted to shut that down, and we said, heck, no, we don't want to shut that down. And people realized that it was in danger of being shut down. And then people got together, they did a capital campaign, they did all the things that we're talking about. And I think it needs to be sold, and I mean, you gotta look at the part of it, how much it's gonna cost and all that. But my end picture is if they become a 501c3 and it becomes a renovated, whether it's renovated or a brand new building, in my opinion, along with the UU Meeting House, between the both of them, I think it can be turned into a moneymaker down the road. There's absolutely no question about that. If you got the right facility, you can draw the right things. But again, you've got to see how much the upfront cost is to start with. But I think we can convince them on that end of it, Howard, if we can get a decent price and some things fall into place.
I think before we even talk about that, is this council needs to decide yes or no. Do they want a theater? Do they want a performing arts center? Do they want both? Do they not? I mean, I am like frustrated up to here because nobody is making a commitment to anything. I made a commitment. I wanted to keep something. I want the theater to not be the town's responsibility, but I don't want it to go away. I want it to be something more. There. I have made a statement. That's where I stand, and I think the rest of the council needs to do the same. This circle talk is just driving me nuts.
Well, I think
I
if you
can't
do step
stand it.
1 and step 2, then we have a lot more information that we can use and we can make sense out of it.
I mean, we've been talking about the theater. The people can watch the meetings, they can read the minutes online, whatever. They know what's going on, and they choose not to do the survey. They choose not to come to the meetings. The only time people come to the meetings is when they want to scream at us because we've done something wrong. Nobody wants to come and say, hey, that was really good what you guys did. So I think we should just make the decision, period.
Well,
Sorry.
I think we need town input in order to do it, because
I
it's their
think we
money.
gave them that opportunity and they chose not to
do
take
it.
part
I
of
know.
it.
I
So
know.
how many times are we gonna do that? We have a budget process that's gonna be coming up, and we have to make a decision whether this entity, whatever it's gonna be, is gonna be supported by the town through taxation. Are our tax dollars are we gonna budget for the entity to operate over the next year, or what?
I think that if I had the answers to 1 and 2, and if they come up reasonable, then I would go out on a limb and say, listen, I think we ought to fund it for another year and see where we're at. Now,
To what
I can
extent?
make it better, I can
To
make a
what
better
extent?
decision when I see what we're looking
What,
at.
yeah,
To what
what did you make it?
extent?
What'd you say?
To what extent will you fund it for the next year?
Well,
Or
that's-
the next 5 years,
Right,
you know?
Right,
You know,
that's the
if-
other
if we
thing.
If we go forward with this possibility, you're not committing to funding it for the next year.
It's
You're committing
5
to
years
funding
or
it for
more.
5 years or more. You know, and that is a bigger pill, you know, to swallow.
and that's why I kept mentioning Johnson Hall, because they are utilizing their space at the same time that they're renovating
But
it.
why do you
So
wanna-
it is,
We have more than one room, though.
Yeah, but
I understand that, but all I'm saying is the possibility.
why do you want to put, yeah, I can understand renovating a building, okay? And heaven knows,
I
I
just-
bought an old home and I've renovated every room, you know? And I put more into it than it's worth right now.
Join the club.
I'm not from Pittsfield,
Me
okay?
either.
I'm not even from Maine originally, I was born in Connecticut. One
Oh,
of
that's
the
it.
things that I like, watch it, is that there was a theater, except that it wasn't taken care of. And now,
See, but why do you want to put $250,000 into a roof that, you know, is over
it's gonna be $250,000 to put a roof on.
the estimate was $180,000 4 years ago.
So probably
That's
about
why I-
220,000 now. But if you could build a brand new building for 325,
And you-
why wouldn't you wanna do it?
It would cost more than 325
Yeah.
to build a building, but.
But I'm just saying, that's an
Yes,
example.
We
yes.
are looking at
$2 million.
over
Yeah,
a million,
yeah.
over $1 million
Yeah.
to build a new
So,
building.
can we decide tonight, is it too much to ask, are we going to become a 501c3 or is it going to stay with the town? That just needs to be decided.
We can't
and
make
then
that
we can go
decision
from
tonight,
there.
this is a workshop, we are not voting.
Okay,
It has
this
to
is
go through the proper channels,
This is true.
It has to be a,
it has to be
council
on the
item.
agenda, it has to go to public hearing,
Yeah.
and we are strapped down by our own procedures, okay? We meet every 2 weeks. Now we're instituting workshops, but that's every 2 weeks. You know, stuff has to be discussed. Then it has to get on the agenda, has to be discussed some more. If we're gonna do it, then we need an ordinance, so it's another 2 weeks, and we need a public hearing. You understand what I'm saying?
Do I detect a note of frustration in your
Yeah,
voice?
I'll
Now,
big
good.
note.
Now, what do you get 20 more under your belt? Won't bother you again.
It's just,
Gets worse.
we can't,
Yeah.
and you can see, we're having trouble seeing the entire picture of this, so
So what
there's,
if I came to you and told you I have half a board that's ready to come on board and say that they would like to start a 501c3?
go for it, baby.
Oh, okay.
We're here, we're ready.
That's what I would say.
So,
You mean as
we-
far as putting a steering committee together, like we talked about, so that they're not the town committee, which is only dealing with operations, you would have a steering committee that would help resolve some of these, explore these issues. Get you your 501c3, come up with your mission statement, put a capital campaign together.
I
That is
think,
what I recommended to the theater committee.
I think it, I mean, it's quite obvious, I mean, we can't make that decision tonight, but it's quite obvious that we can't keep doing what we're doing. Okay, it's not gonna work, yes.
So is it that, I just have a quick procedural question, is it that the 501c3 needs to be set up and then proposed to the town taking over, or is it that the town is gonna recommend a group to set the 501c3? I just wanna know which comes first, chicken or egg?
We're not gonna recommend a group for the 501. If you've got something started, I would jump on that horse and run as fast as you can to get some of that done over the next couple of months before we go into the budget process.
And then present it.
Because that would give us an idea of, if you can do that, if you've got a plan and you've got a steering committee and you can make a presentation that has some sort of a plan to it, even if it's just for the first year, then we can decide how we want to proceed.
Put it,
True?
put it together, and then present it to the council.
But
Okay.
what, next meeting, can
Thank
it
you.
get on the
No,
agenda for
no,
next?
no, please.
Well, it wouldn't be that.
Well, I don't think that Ann could, I mean, she only has a few people now, right? So,
How
You have
would
to
the
plan it out.
501c3, just in a 2-minute breakdown, how does that change what's going on with the theater?
it makes it eligible for grant money.
Because the town
And
owns an operation.
Mostly foundation.
So right
Not
now, it would,
eligible for foundation money.
okay.
But if a 501c3 owns and operates the theater, then they would be eligible to put in applications for
And-
For
funding.
grants.
So.
And the
so-
reason we've been
With the
talking
501.
about performing arts or cultural center is because that opens up for more grants.
Now,
It's just-
Because there aren't,
Yes.
it's my understanding, there's no.
guys, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to note in reference to Keelo's question, yes, the town can get foundation funding through PEAK, but it's mixed in with the economic development, community development. If you want the organization to be separate from the town and we just give a donation, then they're gonna need their own 501c3. But if something comes out, we can, something
Right.
comes out of the blue and all of a sudden there's some money there, we can go apply for it under the town's PEAK because we have a 501c3.
And
But
I
if you
think
want-
that's what we've talked about, is starting with using Peak as their umbrella until they can get their own together, correct?
That can be done.
Okay.
I have serious reservations about using PEAK.
It's gonna be confusing, but.
Because one, it's tied to the town.
Yes, but if-
Two, none of the people on PEAK have any expertise in any of this that I can see. Correct, Tim?
You aren't looking at the expert, that's for sure.
I mean, none of them have any expertise in,
Well-
in anything performing arts related or anything.
But that's
like
why we
that.
go out, we get advised, people to
So-
advise us that
I
they're
didn't know much
experts in the
about it,
field.
and I
Well-
put together a community art program in about 2 weeks on paper.
But I will tell you this much, Mike Gray and Gary have a lot of resources, and they can pull
And
people,
that's
they
the
can pull
thing.
people in, especially Gary. They can
I
pull, they can
understand
pull
that.
people in that are,
Yeah.
that are
And
experts in that area, if that's, and I understand that would be a concern of mine
It's
too.
a stopgap measure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Because
don't see
they
it as a
would-
long-term viability.
No.
There needs to be a separate entity for that. It might get them through the first 6 months or something
Yeah.
to get the ball rolling.
It would be a
But I
stopgap.
don't think that we can rely on PEAK to be the primary driver of this. It needs to be another
No,
organization. The Pittsfield Development Corporation is a 501c3. They operate as part of Pittsfield. So I would encourage you to look
I
at
thought
that.
the same.
Okay, good. I was gonna ask you about that. So, and we'll probably talk some more. But that I would see as more viable because one, it's already a community development type of organization and it already has
who are
some
you talking
niche.
about?
Heart of Pittsfield
Oh,
is a 501c3 under the Pittsfield Development Corporation
right.
is the actual, and then they're doing business as Heart of Pittsfield. And so this mission of a cultural center and this mission of community development falls under that umbrella a little bit better than it does under the economic development. And I think that if we want PEAK to do other things for economic development, then we need to let them focus on that and let them do that. And not muddy the waters and throw this other thing at them.
Okay. Although they seemed willing to do community development work.
But I don't think they're willing to step up and run the theater.
No.
That's,
You know,
no,
they're
that's
not gonna run
not,
the cultural
it's not.
center. They're
that's
not
not
gonna
what
set
I
up
was
a cultural
talking
center.
about. That's
You
not
know,
what I was
doing
saying.
community development is different than operating the theater and setting up a cultural center. I mean,
Well-
that's a full-time job for someone to get this up and running and be an executive director and be able to push all the buttons and pull all the knobs and all those things to make this happen and organize things. It's not going to be something that an organization with 4 members, 5 members can even start doing. There's too much work that would need to be done in order to do that.
Well, at this point, we would need them to be the fiscal partner.
Right.
Right,
And
so
that's
that
all
they
we
could
want
write,
from them.
that's all, right, that's all we were talking about using Peak for, is an umbrella
Just the title.
for,
Fiscal agent, yeah.
so that they could start applying for grants.
But if you want it to be separate and not part of the town, Peak is not the venue.
I understand that, but it is a stopgap until they can get their own 501c3
Which is gonna take a
going.
while.
And Heart of Pittsfield right now is the Woodruff.
There's
Yes,
more
they-
people involved, and there's
Yes,
more
but
people that
they're-
could be.
Do they have regular, I don't think they're still having regular meetings,
Well, I think
because
the
I'm not
Bison-
getting
They
anything.
suspended them
I'm
during
one
the
of
Bison
the,
bicentennial.
I'm one of the directors, and I don't get any emails anymore.
Well, I think
I was
because
there
it was
last
the bicentennial has taken over everybody's attention, you know. So
So-
I would expect it to become more
busy.
more active this fall.
Okay, so we are pretty much, we agree on the step one and the step two. Are we, everybody in agreement with that? Step one being get the two different people together, the estimate, and walk through the theater with them and have them look at that like Deb suggested. Everybody good with that? And there's nobody good with that?
Yeah,
Everybody, I mean, it can't hurt as
So
far
they're
as I'm
gonna do
concerned.
it separately, give us reports, and then we're going to walk through with them?
I think we'll get the reports first, so you can look them over, understanding they were done in past years. In the meantime, we'll contact the individuals. The Chimbro report was done by an engineer separately from Chimbro, but it did have their name on it.
Was
so-
it, yeah, and a Chimbro employee?
Correct, he did
Not
it
by
as a
Chimbro.
special project by a Chimbro employee on his Chimbro time, and he was very nice and helpful. And then Ellen Angel, under her company, did the historic review.
right.
Do we need a historic review done?
Well,
If
we-
it's not a
Look, she's,
historic,
I mean,
If it's
we've
not-
already had one,
We
right?
have the review, so we should use it. It's very good.
well, I know, but all the historic things that she spoke about and the issues are all still there, so I don't know if we need to have this done again. I mean,
We don't
No, we
need to have
don't.
it done.
Not this.
No, this is still good. We need to put an escalator in it for the cost.
You're just looking for a walkthrough with her.
Yes, yes.
Have her as part of the walk.
I know, but what I'm saying is if it's not a historic building, why do we need to?
She was a
Consult the
historic
historic
architect, so
architect.
she used certain federal standards when she put this together, so we'll talk with her about that.
Well,
But she
then-
had to use certain standards to review it as an architect and due to her background. And so it's
So
still
according to
valid.
her,
It's
it's
still
not-
valid.
It's not,
It is
of
not-
historic
it is-
value.
It is not a historic building. It's been remodeled too many times. That's why we can't get the historic grants or the designation.
I just
But
don't wanna
she's-
waste somebody's time. I mean, if
Or
she's
money.
already looked at the
Oh,
building
no,
and
she
given us
loves
a.
it.
yeah, I don't
and-
think we need to,
She's not gonna
I'm
do
more
any extra
interested
work.
in the engineer.
I think we
The
need to have
engineer's the
them,
one that's gonna give us the
we
dollar.
need to have
figure.
them both down, and the historic architect would love to come down. She loves the theater.
If she
Yeah.
wants to come
I
down,
think
bite her
it-
down.
I think it makes sense to have an architect type person there, not just because of her historic knowledge, but just her knowledge of buildings
Of
and,
architect.
As
and
an
what
architect.
what you need to make it what we maybe want it to be, type of thing, you know.
So
I
that-
would
That's
agree.
another question altogether, is what it would cost to make it what we want it to be.
Yes, but she may
Because
be able to
we
just
haven't even
give some
decided what we
tidbits.
want it to be.
No.
I know, but
Or
she could.
if we want it to be something else, so.
Well,
first
we
things first.
we
And
pretty
want it
much
to be
know.
something else that the town doesn't pay for.
So are we good on the step one? Is everybody okay? Can they live with that?
Repeat that again?
Decide,
Just,
Two different, have the person come down, like you said, the one that did this with Chimbro, and walk through the building and have the historian down and walk through the building. And then step two, we get an estimate as from if we can get a cost analysis or some sort of an estimate from the person that we walk through, then we can go to step two and meet with once we develop a plan on that, we can meet with the people at the UU building afterwards. Is that correct? Did I get that
We
right?
would give the UU people at the meeting house an idea of what we would want to do. From talking with the committee, if we went into their building during a period of time, like let's say what it would cost for a year, based upon how we want to use it, which we can figure out. You're just doing assumptions.
Yeah, because I don't know as if us meeting with the UU meeting people would be that beneficial as much as like maybe that meeting
We would
Right.
make
to talk about what they
assumptions,
need. Because us trying to guess what you guys need, that would be just chasing our tail around.
But we don't know if we even need them unless we know if something's going on in the actual building we're in right now.
But it would be good to know though.
it's,
But it would be
still
good-
need to do the research.
Yeah, it's an
It's
option.
not,
Yeah, it's just an option. It would be good to know what that option is. Is it going to cost more than what it, you know?
And
Well,
so,
I mean, I'm
those are the two steps that I'm sensing that we've gotten to tonight. We're not gonna get much further tonight. Does everybody agree with that? We're kinda beating the dead horse again, and that's nobody's
Right.
fault, it's just the way it is.
It's a complicated project.
It's a very complicated, it's gonna take a while. In the meantime, my sentiments is if we get if we take them through, we get the estimate as to what it would cost to redo it, and then we'll know,
Okay.
then we'll take it from there.
We're gonna actually ask them to do an estimate. That wasn't what
They already have one, we just would go over.
Right,
what
go
we-
over with it and what they thought it would be.
Yeah.
With today's prices and
Correct.
things.
Right.
And
Basically,
they'll
they already
know
know.
that.
It'd be between this and this, yes.
Should we ask
Go in there,
the
look.
committee to, maybe put together a presentation on what their interest is in moving forward? From the point of view.
Yeah,
Well, we've asked for that in the past, but
501(c)(3)
The
committee.
five,
Well, that's gonna be two
Whichever.
separate things.
whichever, how do you want it, how do you see it proceeding?
Okay, we will do that.
Yeah, go ahead and put that together and give it to the council.
Well, yes, and do remember that it has to be submitted by,
The
Well, it
Wednesday
doesn't
prior
have to
to the
go
council
on.
meeting, but this is.
no,
what
but
They're
the
just
but the
submitting-
request has to be made.
If they're just
It's-
submitting information to us,
That's
then it
fine.
doesn't have to have a deadline of any.
Right, they could just
If
submit
they
it.
have
Just
an
a
actionable
presentation.
item, then
Right.
it needs to have that deadline of the
Just-
Wednesday before.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
go
If
to
they
their,
just
that
wanna
in
make
my
a
report.
presentation.
Yeah, just
and
present a
do
report, and that'd be fine.
right, and
Okay,
I
good.
go to their meeting, so
I just
it's
wanna
all
make sure we know.
coordinated.
Now, I'm gonna ask, because we're kind of basically at a standstill here at this table. And I'm not trying to cut people off in the audience, but I promise. All right, has anybody got anything else they want to add? Howard, do you want to add anything else? I'm not going to put people on the spot here, but I don't want to cut people off either.
No.
I think we should put people on the spot.
Yeah, I do too.
Deb said what she thought
I
should
said
happen.
what I had to say, I think.
Well, you're not
I
expected
think you sort of
to.
said what you thought should happen.
I would like to see everybody take a stand somewhere. Pick a spot and stand on that.
Come on.
My spot is,
Wishy-washy, back and forth, circle conversations is just ridiculous and a waste of my time.
Oh, Deborah,
This
calm
is how
down.
council-
You're nothing else on television right now.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's how I see it. I'm a person who got on this council because I wanted to see things done. This was one of the objectives I had on my mind when I ran. If we are just gonna keep going around in circles and nothing's gonna change, then let's just drop it. And come budget time, I will vote to close the theater.
So, Tim,
My biggest thing is, let's find out what
Pick
it
a
will,
side.
well, now wait a minute, you pick a side, you don't
Pick a
take,
side.
listen, you don't take a knife to a gunfight, okay? A wise man learns to when to retreat, learns how to match the next day. I've learned that through trial and error, okay?
So what are the bullet points that
Here's a-
you want us to say in our
I,
statement?
my biggest thing is, like I said, let's get that person in there to look at this, to see what the prices would be today. Then at least we got a ballpark figure to work with. We'll figure out, okay, once we do that, then we'll talk to the people at the UU building, then we'll know, okay, can we fund this for another year? Can we fund it for another 2 years? Are we gonna build a new building, or are we gonna try to revamp it? If it costs $250,000 to do something, and then you can revamp the whole thing for $375, you're stupid to revamp it for $250, because you're gonna be revamping it again.
Okay,
That's me.
Tim,
Yes.
that is not taking a stand.
Of course it
a
is.
Position, no, it's not.
How do you see
It's-
that?
Do you want to keep the theater open as it is? Do you want to see it move to privately owned? Make a commitment to what you want it to be. I think we all need to do that, and we need to do it now,
Well, all right.
before we go any
All
further.
right, here's my commitment. I would like to see that community theater be where it is. I'd
I
like to
agree.
see it, I'd like to see it either, if it's not worth fixing, and let's see what it would cost to do it brand new. I'd like to see either new or used, I'd like to see that community theater in that building. However,
No howevers,
yeah.
make a
in the-
stand.
let him finish.
In the meantime, it's very important to me that this theater committee, and as much work as they've done, it doesn't go by the wayside. That's why I think the UU building could play a very important part in this. It could help them, it could help us, and it could help them, if that's what happens.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my commitment is that we get this estimate, let's see what we're looking at, and then my commitment is, let's have a new building there. That's my commitment. In the place it is, if that's what's needed. Maybe it isn't needed, maybe it is as bad shape as I think, but I got a feeling it is. Okay, we'll find out. That's me. Now, am I gonna get blowback? Yes. But I also see this could be a money-making outfit down the road here, if it's done correctly. You can make that money back and then some. That's gonna be a hard sell to the town, to the townspeople. And like Howard said, we gotta get some more input from the people too, we have to. But that's my commitment now. Okay? How'd I sound? You didn't hit me, so I guess I'm sounding all
No, I
right.
didn't
just
hit
'cause
you,
you said-
but you just said the same thing
I said-
3 times in a row.
Well, I don't know how else
You
to-
did not make a commitment to whether you want this to stay open or to close, or to fund it or not fund it. I need to know where the rest of this committee stands on whether we should keep this entity or not. Because we're only going in circles if we don't stand united in a decision.
So Tim, the only thing that you left out that Deborah's looking for is your view on whether it should be a town committee or a 501c3 operation.
I think based on the way things are going today and the money's end of it, I think as much as I hate to say it, I think it should be a 501c3. And I'll go on record on that. Okay? Not trying to talk in circles.
So you want it to, eventually, we're gonna plan to move it from public to private or 501c3?
Correct.
Okay. Next.
I view this whole thing as the town is like the bank, and the theater is the business, and they're building their business, and they're selling it to us, the bank, for money. That's what they've done. This whole theater has turned 180 since January, in my view. The way it was run last year is completely different than the way it is this year. But us being the bank, and you being a new business per se, because you're totally new, I'm on shaky ground. If this was year 3, I would say, wow, this is really gaining momentum and stuff. And not saying that you can't continue on. That's where that's my only hesitation to this whole thing. As long as we can keep going with the same momentum that we've been seeing results, and we've been seeing positive things. As long as we can keep up with that, I don't think it's going to be a problem to fund what we have allocated this year until we can.
Well, we can't make any commitments.
Let him finish.
Until we can get the 501c3 established for the theater, so they can stand on their own legs.
Exactly.
And then perhaps the town would be able to kick in some sort of like a donation or something like that towards it, like an allocation. I'm just throwing this out there, say 25 or 30 grand, say a year or something, that we commit towards this community theater as funds to help make sure it sustains itself and keeps continuing on for years to come. To me, what I see, 2 biggest issues. One is being, like I said, previous statement, it's made a 180. The management's been much different. The way it's been run, people have been thinking outside of the box. It's not just in this theater. It's performing arts. It's maybe ballet.
Exactly.
It's all these other things that are kind of coming together, and I like that. Problem 2 is the obvious thing that we've been beating to death, is the building. That it's like you can't have the horse before the car. You can't have the car before the horse, or whatever. You got to have both at the same time to do really well. But that's where we're stuck right now. So I'm seeing 3 options. Option 1, we keep the building as is. We fix it up and use that. Option 2, we blow it up and tear it down, build a brand new facility. State of the art.
I like the blow up one.
Option 3, and this option 3 I think is more of a temporary solution and not a permanent solution. We choose to work with the UU, and we kind of utilize their facility to work with them, and we maybe put some shows in there, fundraise together for maybe a couple years. It's going to take a couple years to build anything or renovate anything in that building properly. We've done all this work. We want it to be nice when we're done. We don't want this Band-Aid, bonded over, repainted, spray painted thing. Like, we want it to be nice. We want to be proud of it,
Oh yeah.
So
It's gonna be a.
Yeah, it's as Mike, Mike Kincaid always says, it's the crown jewel of the town. It's right there in the center of the town.
It could
Wouldn't it be
be,
nice to
yep.
have something that's like, has, you know, big letter and it says Town of Pittsfield, whatever, Community Center or Performing Arts or whatever it's gonna be, and it's like, you drive through Main Street and you just look over and you're like, wow, look at
Thank
that,
you.
you know?
Yes.
That's exactly.
But, you know, we gotta walk, you know, we gotta crawl before we walk, before we run. You know, so we gotta just approach this
One piece at a time.
Exactly, one piece at a time. So
And the
I'm,
first piece is looking at the studies.
yeah, and I'm gonna make the stand or whatever, 501c3 eventually. I don't think it's possible to just do it this weekend or anything. So I'd like to see that. I'll make that stand. Is that
Well, that pretty much
is
says.
that everything you'd like to?
Yeah.
I'm gonna take questions from you, because she's still mad at me.
I get frustrated with the waffling.
Well, I think we're all trying to please.
I think we got the
majority.
same idea.
We can't please everybody, and it's never happened, trust me. I have a lot more years
Thank you.
with that.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Cable.
Okay, good job. So I support the 501c3 efforts. I want to see it on the main street in 5 years or 3 years. I want to see it be one of the things that people talk about. They want to move to Pittsfield because we've got this asset that is, and I want to go to other towns and hear people talk about that they want to go to dinner on Main Street in Pittsfield and go watch a show. You know, because for years I've heard people talk about how beautiful Pittsfield is, and we do have a great little town here, and I think this would just be one more piece to really help clinch it, you know, and obviously we've got some new schools coming, which are gonna help the cosmetics of our schools and stuff. Sorry, getting off. So I support that, I wanna see it on the main street, and I also support working with the UU meeting house, and with the idea that means for at some point here it's going to be that that there's going to be some sacrifices. This is not going to be the way that this is going to be for the next couple of years is not going to be even really close to how we really want it per se. So I think there'll be some big sacrifices in the way that it is. But I support those sacrifices to get what we want only if we are proceeding with our goal with laser beam focus. You know, like I don't want to have the theater or the community, whatever you want to call it, make these sacrifices and then have us not carry our end, because I
Exactly.
want this, you know. So.
Okay.
Okay. Howard?
I think it's very, my approach is very simple. Either the theater committee is the theater committee, and their approach to it is maybe to proceed definitively towards a 501c3 and you know, a bigger and better you know, center. And if you don't have it, and I know it's asking a lot, if you don't have that in place within the next several months, you know, coming to budget time, I'm going to vote to close it. And you should go to a 501c3, and that is the way to go. Because that's the only way that I see that as the only way that you're potentially viable in any way, shape, or form. So that's my approach.
Okay, thank you, Howard. Heather?
Hold on a second.
She can't
I
run
didn't
as
say
fast
that
as we
much,
can
Heather,
talk.
you know?
You don't think so, but
I used to take notes at meetings, and I know exactly
I don't
what
do
she's
shorthand.
going
I
through.
do scribble and
Yeah,
this
me
and
too.
stuff. I can't.
You teachers are all like, you know?
I'm glad I'm not the only one that said that.
So, the quick answers would be I favor a I'm gonna write this down just so. I favor a 501c3 organization. I don't expect the theater committee to become a 501c3 organization, though.
Oh, no.
I would not presume that our volunteers would have that in them. Obviously, they're doing a great job, and if they want to do that, then we're certainly not opposed to that. But I don't think that we should automatically assume that people that have volunteered to have a meeting or two and do a little bit of volunteer work at the theater are gonna have room for this in their lives, you know. So I do favor a 501c3 status for that. I do favor somebody other than the town running the theater, whatever that entails. Mostly because we've successfully demonstrated that we don't do a good job doing it. You know, we've successfully demonstrated that the town does not do a good job with the mechanism we have in place right now, with committee members changing every 2 or 3 years, and that mechanism just is not a successful model. That does not diminish the work that the theater committee has done this year at all.
Nope.
Because I think that the focus of the committee has changed, and that whole laser focus, you know, they've had, you know, the one goal is to stay open, and I think that's been the driving force for all the work that's been being done. And they've been successful at doing that. You know, we're almost at the end of June, and they're still here.
It
So
shows
that's
in the
good.
numbers too.
So anyway, so I favor 501c3 status, separation from the town for operations, and I would say even ownership of the building. And that's something that we didn't really talk about. We talked about strictly operations. I don't think the town should be owning this building. I do think that the town, if we want to maintain this idea of its community programming in order to have the theater become a cultural center and have that addition to the town, I can get behind that. I can get behind a regular donation to an organization to do that. And as a 501c3, it would be public reporting, so we don't have issues around those types of things.
Right.
There would be public records filed and whatnot. I am more reserved about the building itself. I really don't think it makes any sense at all. Just the dollar figure that we had on the building repairs from several years ago, it's definitely not going to be less than that. And for $780,000, you could put up a pretty nice building for that money. Whether it stays on Main Street or not, I'm not as committed to that. I don't think that it would hurt to have more space, both for parking, if we're going to have 200 to 300 people filling seats on a regular basis, and be able to have more actual seats. I think that while it's certainly had a role on Main Street, and for many people here in town, I, like Howie and Deb, did not grow up here, but I grew up in a small town that had a one-screen theater, and when we lost it, it was, you know, it left us with nothing to do. I can't say that. We had a mini golf place and a roller skating rink.
That's when you turn to drugs.
We lost our roller skating.
Yeah, so, but you know, since that time, my hometown has, the Oakbrook Inn closed in a fire, so it wasn't like anybody chose to do it. But it was also an actual motel and a bar and a restaurant and
We
a
actually
one-screen theater.
with the carriage.
So the, you know, but that doesn't mean that we don't have other things that can fill that space in downtown, like many, I don't know what. But I don't know if it makes sense to shoehorn it into a downtown space, or at least that particular downtown space. I think that we could find other space in town, like maybe that big blue building,
The
old
old
woolen
mill
mill, you know, it has
that
lots of
Chimbro's
space.
using for storage right now.
Right, you know,
Hey,
so
that was,
maybe
I
there's-
suggested that as a community center.
So
That's
maybe
an
there's
interesting
other
building.
options in town that would still be in town, but not necessarily on Main Street. So I'm not like sold on keeping it there. I'm not sold on maintaining the building as it is. I think that it has a really big price tag to fix, and then you're still left with a really big I mean, you could put a new roof on it, but you're still left with a really old building with a lot of limitations. And if you have a grand idea of what you want to do with it, you want to make sure that you have the space to do those things in order to be successful. I do think it's a good idea as a stopgap measure to partner with the UU Meeting House, mostly because it was my idea to begin with, so I still think it's a good idea. I do think it does give more options to a 501c3 or the theater committee in order to do fundraising. Parking is really, really limited over there, so that's a downfall for that. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. 501c3, partial town funding, and partnerships with other entities in the community in order to make it happen, and evaluation of the building. So.
Okay, thank you. Like I said.
I thank all of you. At least now I know where everybody stands.
I want to thank everybody that came here tonight. And again, this was an informational, knock around some ideas, some from way out here, some from way out here, some in the middle, just to get a general idea. I personally, I feel that even though I like the idea of a community theater, like I said, 501c3 seems to be where your grant funding and all your different things are going to come from. So I'd be in favor of that, even though I do like the idea of a community theater. I think it's kind of outlived its time. I am in favor of seeing a building there, just basically because that is the center of town, and I think it belongs there. And I have lived here my whole life, and I've never known it to be anything else except that. So maybe I'm a little skewed that way. Everything has a price tag. You have to pay for it. And I am for the theater committee coming up with some ideas for a 501c3 and presenting it as a report in, and that's fine. And hopefully we can get a new theater there eventually, one way or the other. It's going to be a long process, but this is step one. So thank you for coming. And I will, yes.
Before we wrap up,
Yeah.
I would like to establish a timeline for moving forward rather than having an open-ended, this stuff is going to happen. Catherine, do you think that the walkthrough with the architect and the engineer, whether it's from Chimbro or another person, I'm a little leery of always running to Chimbro to do things too. I mean, I think they're a really good neighbor, they're a really good business to have in town, but I don't think that we want to wear out the welcome at it. They're
It was
fun
an
to work.
independent study.
Well, I know,
by
but
an
we throw
engineer.
out that we'll ask Chimbro a lot, and I don't want them to be taken for granted that they're always going to be there to help us. I think that if we want to do this, we need to be able to do it and stand on our feet and accept any help that's offered graciously, but to be cautious about how much we go and ask for them for help. So next week is the 4th of July, and then we have Egg Festival Week. Our next council meeting is the 16th. That's 3 weeks away. Do you think that we could have that information ready for the council meeting? Is that too tight?
You'll have all the information from the studies right off. It will be based upon the schedules of the engineer and the architect as to when the walkthroughs could be taking place.
You're just
So-
gonna email us that information.
Yes,
Just-
yes.
So,
Mhm.
are we gonna present that to the town council at a meeting, or are we just gonna receive that the updated information?
All right, you're gonna get your information from the studies right off, so
Yes.
within a couple
The
of days.
updated stuff.
Yeah, so you'll get that, you might get it tomorrow.
Mhm.
And then we need to have the architect and engineer schedules so that we can fit in it for everybody that wants to go.
Mhm.
So I'll give you some dates as soon as possible.
Okay.
Remember, it's summer,
Going to be on
There's a
vacation.
holiday
summer
in there,
vacation
yes.
for the people, yeah.
So the 16th, we probably won't have all that done by the 16th, but our next meeting isn't until August 6th. So,
You would be done well before then.
okay, because I think we should schedule another workshop.
I agree.
Maybe the 23rd
What day
of
is that
July,
on?
it's a Tuesday.
Tuesday. Just keep it that same 6:30, 6.
6.
Yeah, this
Oh, right, the
6:30
week of
thing
six-
screwed me up, just so
I
you
think
know.
we need to
Yeah, I
have
thought
all
it
the
was
meetings at the
6:30.
same
I thought it was
time.
6:30, and then I was like, I'm gonna be
All right,
early
so-
tonight.
August,
When I think of you,
I
Todd.
like,
July
if we can
23rd,
get here
the
at
next
6 though
workshop.
and get done at 8.
It's really tough to get here at 6. I
hard
like
for people.
stuffed a bunch of chips in my mouth on my way here.
Heather, that's not
For
helping.
dinner.
I ate
No,
at 3,
it's
no, I
not.
ate at 3 o'clock this afternoon
Well, I was
because
on
I
a
knew.
tractor tilling a field at 3 o'clock this afternoon,
So what are we,
6:30, 6
Did
is
you have
tough.
overalls?
what are we looking at now?
The 23rd of July, can we
All
have
right.
a second workshop?
I will try, I can't guarantee it, I don't know what, I don't have my schedule in front of me, so, but I'll try. If I
At
get,
6:30.
yeah, if I got something I can't get out of, you're gonna have to excuse me out of it, but.
Well,
When's the
July
next
23rd, 6th.
council meeting? The
16th.
16th, right?
Yeah.
16th.
So I believe the 23rd was the day that you're gonna use if you had a workshop on the budget.
Right,
That
we,
does-
that's the finance committee, isn't that, you were gonna get us those dates?
Yes.
Or have somebody put those two calendars together?
Right, yes, I have that one.
Why-
Well, give it to somebody to do.
so can we have the workshop, we're gonna have a workshop on the 23rd.
Yes.
Can we have this be an item to have a brief discussion?
You can do both.
And then address the finance committee, no, it's not finance committee meeting, it's a workshop meeting for the budget.
On the budget.
Right.
Right, right.
Okay, because this is one of the items that we said was gonna be a big thing to tackle, so I think it's appropriate to
It's part
discuss
of
it
it,
there. Because
yes.
whatever they say is gonna have an impact on what we decide to do for the budget.
Yes, and the
Exactly.
finance committee wanted the proposed schedule presented at the July 16th meeting. But I'll send it
Right,
out
but
ahead
it
of
has
time.
all the dates
Yes.
in one place so we
Yes.
can see, so I can make sure I get them all in my calendar.
Okay, so if we have,
So we're adding a workshop on the 23rd of July?
the 23rd of July would be a workshop to discuss our follow-up from this
Okay,
meeting and regular budget, because we wanted to start the budget earlier. So that would be
6:30?
6:30,
Let's keep to the 6:30.
yeah, 6:30.
I just wondered, as far as the meeting with the architecture and the engineer and stuff, will the committee be also invited to attend that?
Yeah.
And then I have, of course, we have the reviews that we had copies of here, but I don't know about you guys, but I never saw the Chimber one. Is there a way that we could get that
Yeah,
email
it's
as
an
well?
old, it's an older study, and it wasn't done by Chimbro, it
Well-
was done by an engineer who worked for Chimbro.
Oh, Ben, good.
Yeah, so we'll see if he's interested in,
He's
working
still-
with us on that, or at least presenting it.
Okay.
Oh, it'll be easy to.
So
Okay,
that,
so
that
that's-
brings us through July, unless we want to have another meeting the following week on the 30th.
okay.
Because there's 2 weeks between,
You were gonna be
Council
away
meetings.
that week?
I leave the 31st.
Okay.
That 31st will be a really long
So when
day,
is
but-
the workshop for the budget?
The 23rd.
That was gonna be the 23rd.
And so we're just not gonna have that?
I
We're
think
gonna have
try
that
to do
and
both.
discuss
And
this.
this one?
Yes.
And
Okay.
the theater is a major budget item.
Okay.
Of course.
So we're scheduled for the 23rd, like I said, I'll take a look at my schedule, and you said what was the other one, the 30th?
30th. Why don't
I'll
we
have
go
to take a
ahead?
look, because I got a very busy schedule in July,
The 30th was
unfortunately.
a backup.
Is a backup for the 23rd?
Yes.
Or a backup because we need more discussion?
For both, yes. In case when we presented the budget calendar, a majority of the counselors weren't able to be at the July 23rd, then we were gonna do it the 30th.
So why don't we schedule a second workshop and we can decide on the 23rd whether we need it or not?
That's what
If
I'm
we
doing. I'm
don't
putting the
think it-
30th in my calendar,
Right,
and
it's
then
a
if we
backup.
don't need it,
Yeah,
don't
if
have
we-
to.
It's a backup.
Backup. All right,
All right.
6:30 p.m. So
anything else?
save.
And.
So workshop on the 23rd and 30th, if we need it.
Which we thought might happen anyway,
Right.
at the finance committee meeting.
Yeah, so we're gonna have a budget meeting, budget workshop, and theater workshop. I think we're gonna need that second workshop.
So I would like to see our workshops have a goal. that by the end of the meeting, we're gonna have a consensus, not a decision, but a
Right.
consensus. I think that
I
we
think we
made
have.
progress on that tonight.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see a consensus goal for the workshop on the 23rd be to decide, or consensus
Yeah, no decisions.
about the building issue, like what to do with the building.
Okay, except,
But you
will
won't
we
have
be
all
able
of
to go
that.
through the building before that workshop?
Well,
Depends
the
on the people.
option would be to go through the building with the architect and the engineer when they go through. Catherine will let us know,
Yeah,
right?
we will get meetings set up as soon as we can, understanding that a lot of people are on vacation during this
Yeah,
period of time.
I think just set the meeting for when they're available, and then whoever can go
Whoever
will
can go, will go. We'll all still have the
We'll get the
studies.
report and we'll get the study and the information from them, so if that's all we have to go on.
Are we asking the engineer to give us,
One of
No.
one of the items will be, is there a way for you to project forward the cost?
okay,
And
thank you.
we'll work with them on that.
Given that report from 2016, just
Correct,
yeah,
yes.
I think
And
the
there
other
is.
piece of information we need is some information about the building next door.
yeah,
If there's an option there, it is for sale or for rent or whatever, but if the option is there, then I think that, we need to have that information as well as the information about the theater building
And
as well.
raising
I know,
your
but I
hand.
was talking, so I wanted to finish my thought.
I think, have you done that?
I have toured it this spring. And Dwayne Ames is interested in selling it in 2 years. That gives us time, if we choose to go that route, to go through it, look it over. It appears to be very nice. I have to say, I'm not an expert, but I have faith that Kleinschmidt wouldn't have put as much money into it as they have if it wasn't somewhat decent. He has maintained it very nicely. He's put new roofing on the back end, he's put new this in and new that in, so it's fairly updated and new. And he did give me a price at the time, but he did return after we met and called me back and said, I just want to make it clear that you can rent it all you want for the next 2 years, but, or lease it, but I'm really not interested in selling it for 2 years. And I'm assuming there's like a retirement type of situation why he wants to hang on to it for 2 years. But that building does abut, obviously, the theater, and you were talking about stage,
Phasing.
you were talking about, thank you, dressing rooms and green rooms and stuff like that. That, I have talked to theater people such as Deb Susi, and I've asked her, because I'm not a theater person, I enjoy watching it, but no way would I get on the stage, no. But I asked her, is it feasible to have everything go in and out to one side? Oh yes, she said, of course. And it's a big building, so there's plenty of storage upstairs. I don't know, this is just throwing it out there, it's probably crazy talk, but there's plenty of room up there. Sky's the limits. Whether it's residential, a caretaker type of thing, I don't know. But there's stuff that could be thought about down the road. But it's a nice building.
so we need to see some information about that for before the next
Like a spec
workshop.
sheet, or how big is it,
square footage and
Yeah.
floors and conditions.
Floors.
All right.
Does it have an
Floors, right?
elevator?
Yeah, we have some of that
No,
information.
there's no
Oh,
elevator.
good.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, the town.
You have that already?
We have some of it, yes.
All right, is there anything else that people want to throw in here before, because we're getting past our time that we agreed to here?
Well,
I know,
did
it's
we
fine.
agree on a goal for the next meeting?
Well, I think to review those and to make a decision on the building.
Okay.
I think that we really need to
Okay.
just
Yeah.
start making decisions, because if we make a decision on the building, that affects
Consensus.
a consensus about the building. It affects what could happen
Then we
in
can
the
present it
budget.
to the council.
You know,
We can present it to
has
ourselves.
impacts for what we're gonna be talking about later
Yeah,
that meeting, and then the
absolutely.
following one, and the following one.
Sounds
So
good
we
to
need
me.
to make those consensus is to
Consensus.
Sounds Japanese.
The architect will be running down here.
Yeah, to just, because we need that information before we go forward on the rest of our budget. Because I think, I think it's definitely gonna have a budget impact one way or another. And it could be sizable, depending on what we think we might wanna pursue. Or it could not. So, I think that we need that information.
Okay.
Yep.
But I think we need to make that our goal for the next meeting, is to make a consensus.
Sounds good
Okay.
to me.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Everybody agree in that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Not hearing any, I'm gonna look for a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have
And
first